Imagine the most hunted man on earth. Behind him, 100 elite assassins, fueled by a bounty that could buy a kingdom. Ahead of him, 500 miles of lethal, scorched emptiness. He has no army, no fortress, no armor. Most history books tell you he fled from Makkah to Medina. They treat it as a tactical retreat, but they are wrong. It wasn't a flight. It was a surgical redirection of human destiny. While the world thought he was hiding in the shadows of the Hijaz, he was actually dismantling the power structures of the old world. You were taught the route, but you weren't taught the encounters. You weren't taught about the moment the desert itself rose up to defend him. The Hijrah, the migration, is the pulse of our calendar. It is the 0 hour. But in the halls of our madrasas, we often gloss over the grit of the journey. We focus on the destination and forget the physics of the miracles that happened in the between. In the Quran, Allah reveals the nature of this protection. If you do not aid the Prophet, Allah has already aided him when those who disbelieved had driven him out. This is not just history. This is the blueprint for how the divine intervenes when the world says it's over. This is knowledge rarely highlighted because it requires us to look past the dates and into the soul of the desert. Today, we decode 5 remarkable, hidden events that unfolded during that trek. 5 encounters that transformed a small group of fugitives into the architects of a civilization. We are going to look at the prophecy given to a bounty hunter, the miracle of the emaciated sheep, and the hidden psychological warfare that won Medina before they even stepped inside its gates. By the end of this, you will understand that when you are on the path of truth, your enemies aren't just obstacles, they are your future allies. The Quraysh were desperate. They placed a bounty of 100 red camels, a fortune beyond imagination, on the head of the Prophet, peace be upon him. One man, a master tracker named Suraka bin Malik, saw his chance. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a specialist. He found the trail where others saw only sand. Suraka spotted the silhouette of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Abu Bakr. He spurred his horse, his spear ready. But the desert refused to cooperate. This wasn't a natural occurrence. It was a physical manifestation of divine will. As Suraka closed the distance, his horse's front legs sank into the ground as if the hard earth had turned to water. He fell. He tried again. The second time, as the horse struggled, a column of white smoke or dust rose into the sky, a sandstorm that targeted only him. Think of a time you tried to force a door open that Allah had locked. No matter your talent, your horse kept sinking. Suraka realized this wasn't a man he was chasing. It was a decree. He begged for peace. The Prophet, peace be upon him, looked at this man who, moments ago, wanted him dead and said, "How will you feel when you are wearing the golden bracelets of Kisra?" Kisra, the emperor of Persia, the superpower of the age. To say this while being a fugitive in the desert was, to a worldly mind, insane. But it was a promise. Years later, when the Persian Empire fell under the caliphate of Umar, a grey-haired Suraka was called forward and handed the heavy, gold-encrusted bracelets of the fallen emperor. This teaches us that your current persecutors are often the future witnesses of your success. The very thing chasing you today might be the thing that testifies for you tomorrow. But the desert doesn't just provide protection. It provides sustenance where there is none. In a place called Qudayd, the sun was a hammer. The group reached the tent of an elderly woman, Mabad. They were starving. They asked for meat, for milk, for anything. But the land was gripped by drought. The Prophet, peace be upon him, noticed a lone sheep. So weak, it couldn't even follow the flock to the dry pastures. It was essentially a carcass waiting to happen. The Prophet, peace be upon him, asked, "Does she give milk?" Mabad replied, "She is too exhausted for that." He asked permission, placed his hand on the udder, and mentioned the name of Allah. Imagine a dry well suddenly overflowing with crystal water. The udder swelled. He filled a massive vessel, fed the woman, fed his companions, and then drank himself. He left her with a full vessel and a transformed life. When her husband returned, he was shocked by the milk. He asked who had been there. Ma'bad's response is the most beautiful physical description of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in our tradition. She spoke of his evident brightness, his luminous face, and his words that were like a string of pearls. She described him as the most beautiful and radiant of men from a distance, and the best of them up close. The positive effects of his blessed visit lasted for years as she later visited the Prophet, peace be upon him, gifting him some cheese and a velvet cloth. Ma'bad saw what the Quraysh couldn't, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, brought blessing to the broken. If you feel emaciated, spiritually or mentally, know that the touch of the Sunnah can draw life out of what you thought was dead. But as they moved closer to Medina, the threat shifted from trackers to entire tribes. Buraidah was a chieftain. He had 70 warriors with him. He wasn't looking for a miracle. He was looking for the bounty. When Buraidah intercepted the group, the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked him, "Who are you?" This was powerful. Before Buraidah could ask the identity of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Abu Bakr, and realize they found the people they are looking for, the Prophet, peace be upon him, takes full control of the conversation. He said, "Buraidah." The Prophet, peace be upon him, turned to Abu Bakr and whispered, "Our matter has become cool and good." The name Buraidah means coolness, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, used a play on words to create a positive atmosphere. He asked his tribe. He said, "Sahm," which means arrows. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Your arrow has come out." He used the linguistics of the moment to signal peace. In an instant, the arresting officer became the bodyguard. Buraidah and all 70 of his men embraced Islam. Buraidah took off his white turban, tied it to his spear, and rode ahead. He didn't see a fugitive anymore. He shouted to the horizon, "The King of Peace is coming." True power isn't in subduing bodies. It's in capturing hearts. The Prophet, peace be upon him, turned a 70-man ambush into a 70-man royal procession. Your greatest opposition can become your greatest support if you meet them with the character of the Hijrah. But even a king of peace needs to enter his new home with dignity. They were nearing the end. Their clothes were stained with the dust of several provinces. They looked like travelers who had been through a war, because they had. They crossed paths with a caravan returning from Syria. In it was Zubair bin Awam, the Prophet's cousin. Zubair didn't just give them news. He saw their state and presented them with fine white garments. This was the wardrobe change of history. The Prophet, peace be upon him, left Makkah in the dark, in the clothes of a man being hunted. He approached Medina in pure white, reflecting the light of a new dawn. Allah provides the raiment of honor just when the struggle is at its peak. When you have stripped yourself of everything for His sake, He will clothe you in something better than what you left behind. Finally, they reached the outskirts, but the journey wasn't over until the first stone was laid. On the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, they reached Quba. The atmosphere was electric. The Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't go straight to the center of Medina. He stopped. He stayed for 4 days. In those 4 days, he did something permanent. He established Masjid al-Quba, the first mosque. He showed that the first priority of a new society isn't a palace or a marketplace. It is a place of prostration. While at Quba, a man appeared with feet so swollen and bloodied he could barely stand. It was Ali bin Abi Talib. He had stayed in Makkah to return the valuables of the very people who tried to kill the Prophet, peace be upon him. He had walked the entire distance alone, on foot, through the same brutal terrain. The Prophet, peace be upon him, embraced him and wept. This is the definition of loyalty. Ali returned the trusts to the enemies of Islam because a believer's integrity is not dependent on how they are treated, but on who they are. The Hijrah ended with the building of a mosque and the return of integrity. It teaches us that you cannot build a future if you haven't settled the honest debts of your past. The Hijrah was not a journey of miles. It was a journey of certainties. The Prophet, peace be upon him, walked into the desert with nothing but a companion and a promise. He walked into the unknown, and the unknown bowed to him. The earth held his enemies' horses, The dry sheep gave him milk. The chieftains became his heralds. Look at your own life. Look at the Makkah you are trying to leave behind. The habits, the toxic environments, the fears. You might feel like a fugitive today. You might feel like you are walking on bloodied feet like Ali, or hiding in a cave while the world hunts you. But remember, the desert only looks empty to those who do not know who owns the sand. If you are moving toward Allah, you are never truly being chased. You are simply being led. Think about the bracelets of Hijrah in your own life. What has been promised to you that you are too afraid to believe? Until next time, look deeper.